Let me start by making clear that I am a hardened skeptic and atheist. I do not subscribe to any theological doctrine or believe in ghosts, aliens, or messages from beyond. I also do not believe in any form of New Age spiritualism. No crystals, no spirit healing, no entities watching over us. But there is this one incident I cannot explain. My story takes place in the mid-1970s in a city in Germany. I was about 7 or 8 years old at the time. The house we were living in had an upstairs and a downstairs apartment. My family occupied the upper apartment, and a middle-aged couple lived downstairs. They made a bit of extra money by providing daycare for various children, but they never cared for more than one child at a time. I usually befriended those kids, and was quite used to them not coming anymore because their parents' schedules had changed, or they had moved or whatever. Then there was this one girl I especially connected with. I have since forgotten her name, but I am sure it started with an R, so let's call her Regina. I still remember that she was 1 or 2 years older than me and had light curly hair. I thought she was beautiful. So one day, I was playing a kid's version of badminton with my mother on the big lawn right in front of our house. It must have been a weekend because it was around noon and I was not in school. We were passing the ball back and forth when I saw Regina standing in the doorway. I was not the least bit surprised to see her and called out to her, something like, "Hey Regina, want to join us?" She answered, "I am going away, Ron. Goodbye." In German, of course. She looked absolutely normal to me and was wearing regular 70s clothing, if there is such a thing. But one thing struck me immediately. She was not smiling, but was very, very serious. Also, her voice was somehow flat. She then started calmly walking away from our house across the lawn and passed right between me and my mother. My mother then asked, "Who are you talking to?" And I said, "Regina, you must have seen her." When I turned my head to look for the girl, who should have still been on the lawn, she had vanished. One day later, my father called me into his study because he had something to tell me. Regina had died in the downstairs apartment. She had played with a tape recorder that had a faulty power cord and was electrocuted. My father said that he was so sorry, but also glad that I did not have to witness the ambulance and police arriving as I was in school. I then asked, "But when did this happen?" Turns out it happened the day before I saw her leaving the house. The obvious answer to this is that I must have overheard my parents talking, and my subconsciousness made the encounter up. I tell you, that is not true. Seeing Regina felt totally natural to me at first, and there is one more thing. Decades later, I was talking to my mother, a very rational woman, about this, and she revealed to me that my parents had planned to not tell me about the death at all. Remember? I was very much used to the kids from downstairs not showing up anymore, and my parents just wanted to leave it at that. My mother is adamant that they did not discuss the matter. They only told me because my mother had heard me talking to Regina. I am now a 48-year-old man, and I have never encountered any other supernatural event in my life. When my beloved grandparents died, and my adored father passed away much later, I was actively looking for signs. Although I had felt a connection to the girl, my emotional connection to my family had of course been much greater. But nothing ever happened. My memory of that day is still very clear, and I have not embellished the story in any way. And all these years later, I still ask myself, where did Regina go? On May 24th of 2019, the dog that I'd had for 10 years passed away, and the death hit me really hard. I was in the room when he passed on. The next day, by some odd chance, we got to take care of Daisy, my friend's dog. One night, I went out into my backyard late at night and began singing, "Waving Through a Window." As I got to the chorus, I began to feel like something was wrong. I opened my eyes, and out in the middle of the yard was a spectral shape, making its way towards me. Daisy looked at it, cocked her head and approached it. I looked at how it was moving and its mannerisms, and it looked like my dog. He was out there for a while. The next night, as I was going to bed, I looked in my parents' room, and he was on their bed, and Daisy growled. I went out again the next night to see if he was there. Sure enough, he appeared. I called out, "Teddy, it's okay. You can go rest now." A tear fell from my eyes. I blinked, and when I opened my eyes, he was gone. Now, I've never gotten any confirmation that this was real or my imagination, but I like to think that he came back one last time just to make sure I was okay. Rest in peace, my friend. May we meet again one day. It was about 1 a.m. in 1999 when I suddenly had an asthmatic crisis. My wife and our 2-year-old daughter were asleep in the bedroom. I had none of my drugs on me, not even an inhaler. I had to get to a hospital, and fast. So I woke my wife up. One look at my face and the forced, painful breathing, she understood the danger I was in. Emergency services are scarce in my town, but I had no choice. We had to seek help from neighbors. None had fuel in their motorcycles, so we decided to walk to the clinic. Each step I carried was a painful one, and I was sure I was going to die. Then from the distance, we saw a headlight of an approaching motorcycle. My wife and were praying the motorcycle will not cut off to any side roads before it gets to us. He stopped and asked us what's the matter. My wife told him I had to get to a clinic fast. He asked me to hop on. My wife refused to return home, insisting she would walk behind me to the clinic. The cyclist offered to take all of us, me, my wife, and my daughter tied to her back. The hospital gateman unlocked the gates, and we drove in. The nurses ran out and commenced immediate treatment. My wife went back to pay the motorcyclist, but he was no longer there. She went to ask the gateman the whereabouts of the cyclist, and he was confused. He did not open the gate to anyone after we drove in, so how did the motorcyclist get out? Needless to say, we stayed in the hospital for the rest of the night, even after my treatment, and we were free to go home. It was around 11 years ago, and I still think about it a lot. There was a lady from work who always kept herself to herself. Lots of people at work found her awkward or cold, but I had a really great connection and working relationship with her. We often chatted in the toilets and had a laugh and a giggle. If somebody wanted to ask her to help with something, they would ask me to ask her as she was nicer with me, although I believe that's a two-way street. I think she was maybe shy and awkward and that others misunderstood her character. There was a time where she was clearly unwell. We noticed physical and also mental changes, but being the private person she was, nobody knew what was wrong. She then went off on long-term sick. I often thought about her, and if she was okay, it made me feel really sad whenever I thought about it. One night in a dream, I came to in one of the toilet cubicles at work. The lights were off, and I remember feeling really cold. I had to wonder, is this a dream? I remember that conversation in my head. First, I thought, what am I doing here in the night? Then I started to reconcile that it was a dream. I walked out of the cubicle, and this colleague friend of mine floated through the main bathroom door, totally expressionless and with her hair down. I noticed this as she never wore her hair down. The strange thing was I wasn't scared, even though it felt so real. She then stopped in front of me and handed me a naked, screaming baby boy with a big, thick mop of dark hair. I was trying for a baby at that time. I took the baby, and then she turned round and floated back out through the mirrors. I called after her 3 times, and I was totally distraught when I was calling. I had a feeling then she wouldn't be coming back. The next day I told my colleagues and husband about the dream. I told them it was a strange dream, and I felt like I was there. I remembered every detail. I recalled to them about feeling cold and having goosebumps in my dream. I don't recall feeling that in dreams before or since. When I was at work 4 days later, we were called into a meeting. Our boss told us our colleague, the lady in my dream, had passed away on the Sunday night, the same night I'd had the dream. Her family had only just called to let him know. I was really upset. I also recalled the dream, and it gave me chills, but also a bit of comfort at the same time. I remember my colleagues saying afterwards how strange it was that I'd had the dream about her.